Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts. On today's show or program, whatever you want to call it, today's hangout, I'm going to talk on different topics: church closings, Cardinals, Pope Francis, and atheists. First, um, let me touch on the church closings. As you may know by now, the Archdiocese of New York is closing several parishes or churches. And this is bringing about a lot of discussion, a lot of anger, and understandably so because people don't like to lose their place. It's like losing your church is like losing your home, pretty much. Especially you grew up there, you were baptized there, you met people there, became friends and whatnot. And when the news comes that your parish is gonna close, it hits you like a ton of bricks, so to speak. But the church closings is nothing new. This happens all the time, and I know an atheist. Sometimes they celebrate, yay, the church is closing. They're closing parishes and whatnot. We're winning. Religion is dying. And then there's some that claim that the churches are closing because the dioceses are bankrupt, or the sex abuse scandals, were too much to handle, and the church could not fight back or bounce back from it. Some of these are valid arguments, but when you take a look at it and the facts, you start to realize that there's more to the story. There's more things that are related to the closing of the parishes. In New York, a lot of parishes are going to close, and it's a bit disconcerting to hear that. And the numbers are just astounding. 112 parishes will be merged and will create 55 new parishes. And the parishes that close, they're gonna pretty much have a year to discuss what to do with the buildings, whether the people want to use them for different activities or have uh, a mass or some kind of celebration once a year or something like that, or just get rid of the property, sell it, or convert it into something else, which most likely will be the case. And as it was with I remember St. Augustine in the South Bronx. It's a beautiful church built in the mid 1800s, I believe. Beautiful church, and they closed down and they demolished it, they destroyed it. And I remember back in the Bronx, I used to drive by Third Avenue or take the 15 bus, 21 bus on Third Avenue in the Bronx, and you used to see the church, St. Augustine, all the way up there on the top of this elevated section of the Bronx, this hilly or higher ground of the Bronx, and the church looked nice there on that all the way up there, the visible. I could imagine how it looked like centuries ago, a century ago, where there weren't so many tenements and buildings and all that. There were just houses, and the Bronx looked more like a farmland than it does a city or an urban area. So they demolished it, and now there's just an empty lot there, and I think they're going to build apartments or houses or something. I'm not sure, but it's heartbreaking. And the people had to move all the way to Webster Avenue to, I believe, Our Lady of Victory Church. So now it's Our Lady of Victory St. Augustine Church. That's the name of it now. Or the other way around, St. Augustine slash Our Lady of Victory Church. And we have to ask ourselves why these parishes are closing. You know, what's going on? Why is the Catholic Church this powerful organization, institution, which generates a lot of millions and offerings and different things, different ministries? Why is it struggling to keep these parishes alive, these churches alive? Well, there's different factors to it. First, in New York and in many other states, when the early immigrants during the time of the settlers and when the Catholics started coming to America to settle, they built many parishes, a lot of churches. And sometimes this was due because of race or ethnicity. You know, one group didn't want the other group to participate in their parish, so they end up creating sometimes what's called ethnic groups or ethnic churches, I should say. The Polish church or Italian church, and things like that. And what ended up happening was almost every other block you see a Catholic church, and you see this a lot in Manhattan. And you go to Lower Manhattan, there's almost a church every block, every 2 blocks, and the area changed a lot. When those churches were built, the area looked way different. There were houses there. People actually lived there, and the whole area just looked different. It wasn't all these sky, skyscrapers and all of these things that we see today. And so, as soon as that started changing, people started moving out. They destroyed the homes. They built more commercial zones and industrial zones. These churches became pretty much obsolete, just decorations there on the street, remnants of the past. And of course, who's going to attend them? Just workers that come there on the weekdays to work. But on the weekends, they're pretty much empty. And there's really no purpose for these churches to be there. And in this world, things are not free. They cost money. It costs money to maintain buildings. It costs money to pay bills, electric bills, utility bills, phone bills, internet bills now. Um, the salaries of the priests and the staff or anybody who works there. It's a lot of money. It's not cheap. And again, this is not the fault of the church. This is just the way society is. Things cost money. People need to get paid. People need money to take care of their families. But if nobody's going to the parish, there's no money coming in. So there's no way to maintain these structures and the staff in them. So the Cardinals, Cardinal Egan and Cardinal Dolan now, they have no choice but to close these parishes down. At least they are open to letting the people talk on what to do with them. Because these parishes, these buildings belong to Catholics. They belong to all of us. And the ancestors that built them, they left it to all of us, these parishes, these beautiful parishes. Many of them, they are really gorgeous. When you step inside them, it's like you enter a different world. Especially in Manhattan, you have all the noise of the traffic and the hustle and bustle of the people, walking around like automatons and not paying attention to the surroundings. And then you enter these churches, and it's like a whole different world. It gets quiet, peaceful, serene, and you just get lost in the not only in the presence of God and Christ in the Blessed Sacrament, but you get lost in the aesthetic value of the building itself, the columns, the structures, the acoustics, the stained glass windows, the statuary, all everything. You just get lost to it with it. And it's unfortunate that these buildings had to shut down and close and most likely be sold or destroyed, completely demolished, like what happened with St. Augustine in the South Bronx, in the Morris section, the Morrisanian section of the Bronx. And this is something that we had to really look at carefully, especially the bishops and the lay people had to look at carefully what to do to prevent these closures. And I believe in Chicago, Catholics are doing what they call a mass mob, where a whole bunch of people go to different struggling parishes and fill them up to pretty much wake up the people there and let them know that we're Catholic and we're family. We stick with each other, we have each other's back and whatnot. And I think that's a good start of doing a good way of doing it. Having these mass mobs going visiting parishes that are struggling and remind those Catholics there that they're not alone and that they have to, struggle there. They had to continue and not give up. And hopefully that boosts the morale of the parishioners there of these struggling parishes to invite others to come and join them for Mass and participate in groups. Maybe inspire them to start groups in the parish to bring people in because there's different ways of bringing people in. Human beings are social beings. We love to party, we love to hang out, we love to make friends, we love to socialize, we love to be together. And of course, we love to fight as well. But we have to take advantage of humanity, of being human, and start different groups and things in the parishes to bring people in. We have to be creative, of course, without compromising the church's teachings or the behavior of what's expected of a Catholic. But create things, creativity, use creativity, imagination to bring people in, especially the young people. Start a choir for young people, start a music group for young people where they play for a youth mass or something like that. Or, some young kids today are getting into Catholic rap or hip hop and they following in the footsteps of Father Stan Fortuna. And doing that, you could start something like that because I'm sure there's a lot of young people that want to praise God using their music, hip hop, reggaeton, or pop, or whatever it is that's popular today. And they want to glorify God, but with their own style, with their own flavor. And I don't think they should be, pushed aside from doing this. They should be encouraged. Again, as long as they stay faithful to the teachings of the church and not caricaturize the faith, but to make it more approachable via culture, because that's how the Catholic Church has thrived throughout the centuries. The church spread throughout the Middle East or throughout Europe, and it incorporated itself into the cultures of the people, so that the people were felt comfortable with this church. It wasn't this alien spaceship that came down and wanted to convert everybody into this strange thing. The people heard the message, it was preached to them in the way they understood it, and the people brought what they had, their culture, their music, into the church. And now we have these beautiful liturgies all around the world that bring about a rich atmosphere, not only spiritually, but also psychologically, in regards to bringing the culture of the people to before the altar to worship God and praise God. And again, these things shouldn't be prevented. And I get upset when pastors are rigid and they don't want to work with the people. They're not open to new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. And we can't afford to do that in the 21st century. We just lose everybody. And again, I'm not saying that we have to make the mass into a entertainment thing or a show. The mass shouldn't be a show or entertainment, but it should be able to draw people in. And we could do that by using the people's own culture and the people's own expression in order to get them to come in and absorb the liturgy as it's supposed to be absorbed. Because the liturgy, to we have to be honest, is Eurocentric, is European themed, and that really is not gonna respond to a lot of people because they're not used to it. If you're not European and you weren't born loving classical music or the classical art and things like that, you're going to get bored. And that's what happens a lot of times in the mass, especially with the young people. They get bored. They hear the music, it sounds like a funeral, like somebody died, and they get depressed because they grew up listening to a different type of music and behaving in a different way. And that's what they're used to. So when they get hit with these solemn hymns and whatnot, they get bored. And it's not the hymn's fault. It's not the mass's fault. It's not their fault. It's just there's a psychology that that we have to acknowledge of the human being. We get bored. There's certain things I like that you don't like. There's certain things that you like that I don't like. And the churches, the parishes have to find the common denominator of how to balance things out so that the people come and they worship God, and I hate to use the word enjoy it, but at least they come out of there fulfilled, satisfied. They don't feel like they just went to mass just for the heck of it because it's an obligation or because they're scared to be excommunicated or scared to go to hell. That shouldn't be those shouldn't be reasons to go to mass. You should go to mass because you want to be with Christ. You want to be saved. You want to experience the love of God and the love of neighbor. Those are the reasons why you should go to mass, not because it's an obligation. You have to wake up early in the morning, force yourself to go to Sunday mass and whatnot, and then go home and sleep the rest of the day. That's not how it should be. So these parishes that are closing, there's different ways that they could work and get people to come in by being creative and finding ways to listen to the Holy Spirit, the different charisms that the Holy Spirit provides to each and every one of us. Another thing is, the behavior of the parishioners themselves and the priests especially. I never get tired of hearing people complain that the priest was a jerk. He was a, I can't say the word, but it begins with an A, and it's another word for an orifice. But they use all these kinds of terminology to describe the priests, pastors, and other parishioners who are in leadership roles in the parish. They feel alienated by them. They say, "Oh, this priest was rude to me," or I came to him with my problems and he didn't want to hear it. I felt unwelcomed and whatnot. And priests really have to pay attention to how they present themselves to people and lay people, especially those lay people who are in authoritative positions in parish councils, vicariate councils, diocesan councils, or who run specific groups in the parish. You have to remember that you're there to serve people, not to dominate or lord over them. And this applies to priests as well and bishops. You're not a priest or a bishop. You weren't called to that ministry, that way of life to lord over people, to being to be on this high and mighty, powerful person who bosses people around. That's not what it's supposed to be about. You're there to serve them, to take care of them, their spiritual needs, and in many cases, their material needs. Because Christ calls us to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, visit the sick, visit those who are in prison, etc., etc. So it's very important how priests and lay people, all of us, how we behave in front of others. We have to try to be friendly. We have to try to be courteous, understanding, patient, which is something we all lack, especially me. And we have to be Christ for other people because many times you're the one who's going to present Christ to people. It's not going to be Pope Francis. It's not going to be a saint. They're not going to have an apparition of the Virgin Mary. It's going to be you. You're going to be the one that's going to present Christ to people. And you got to do it in nice, humane way, not lording over them, not arrogance, not I'm holier than thou, sanctimonious type of attitude or whatnot. You gotta be humble, and naturally we will feel that. I that's probably the class in life that I get F's all the time, and humility, lack of humility, and so forth. But we have to try our best to be friendly to people, welcome them. And I really dislike those people that describe the so-called Church of Nice, and they seem to have a problem with this idea that we have to be welcoming and friendly. Christ didn't call us to be jerks to people. That's not how you bring people to Christ. I was watching a video the other day of Michael Voris, who um, who calls himself an evangelist and likes to preach. And he has a lot of good messages, don't get me wrong, but sometimes he gets a little bit out of hand. And in this specific message, he's saying that, if he says something to the effect, if you come to Mass and you don't follow the teachings of the church, it's better that you don't come at all. And I mean, you can't be that way. You can't say that just because you disagree with the church, you shouldn't come. You should come to the church because you're getting grace from God. Because conversion is a process. Michael Voris and anyone who believes this needs to understand that conversion is a process. Just because you're in the church and you obey every command, every canon law, you're faithful to the teachings of the church, doesn't mean that you're going to heaven. Doesn't mean that you got it right. Because it's a process. We are all being converted little by little. We were being transformed by the grace of God. So we don't have a right to tell people not to come to the church just because they might not agree with a specific teaching. It's better to have them in the church because that way we could slowly correct them into accepting the teaching that they have a problem with. And we could, like a pedagogy, guide them along the way to accept whatever it is that they're having a problem accepting in the church, which most likely has to do with sex or whatnot, contraception and things like that. Instead of telling them, hit the road, Jack, get away, and slam the door on them. That's not the Christian thing to do. That's not what Christ calls us to do. And if we continue with that attitude of alienating people, then of course you're going to see church closings. People go to church to see the shepherd, not to see a wolf. If you're a priest, you're a pastor, you're a layperson who runs different ministries in the church or takes on a leadership role in the parish, if you present yourself as a wolf to people, they're going to run out of there. They're not going to come back. Put yourself in their shoes. Will you feel comfortable if somebody's treating you nasty or with an attitude or making you feel unwelcomed? Or will you feel comfortable if somebody's coming to you and saying, "Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. Welcome. How do you like the parish? Are you new here? Let me introduce myself. My name is so and so, and this is Father so and so, and here's a bulletin, and these are the activities of the parish. You're welcome to come. Again, my name is so and so. My email, my number, whatever. We're here to serve you." If you hear that, you're gonna win people. You're gonna come to the parish if somebody approaches you that way. But if you come to a parish and the people are sucking their teeth and looking at you nasty, or perhaps you're not dressed properly, quote unquote, and they looking at you up and down as if mass or the church is a fashion runway thing that we had to judge people on how they dress or look. If you gossip about people, or this lady prays too loud, or this guy he thinks he's the boss, or he wants to do things better than I do. And if you go with that attitude and people see that, and especially those people that see that are new to the parish, they're gonna get disgusted and turned off, and they're gonna leave. So it's very important to behave properly. Otherwise, we're gonna scare people, and that we don't want to do. We don't want to scare away people. And the next thing is with the Cardinals. The synod that took place a couple weeks ago, last month. Um, I was extremely bothered with Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Casper, who were having a battle out in the media. It almost looked like two rappers having a battle, JC versus Nas or something like that, having a battle, via the media, attacking each other. And I was thinking to myself, is this the Catholic Church? I mean, what's going on? Are these Catholic bishops, Catholic cardinals, you know, presenting this dissent publicly? They should keep this private. That's why in the conclave, they shut them down, they take away their cell phones, and they tell them to be quiet and pray and pick the next pope. They're not supposed to go outside and discuss, oh, well, I like this cardinal. No, I don't like this cardinal. This is why I don't like him. They're not allowed to do that because it just scandalizes people, and it gives an ugly image to the church. So in light of that, I was disgusted by the way Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Casper were making their disagreements so public. I mean, it's okay to disagree. I'm not saying we shouldn't disagree with people or debate with people, but Lord knows I love to debate and fight with people, but we should, especially in the church, keep it among ourselves. And especially those in positions of power, the cardinals, the bishops, they should keep it among themselves and not make it public, especially in today's world where the media takes words and just creates a whole soap opera out of them. And we see that time in and time out with Pope Francis. He says, don't judge gays, and then already people, the media start saying, oh, the church is not going to approve the gay lifestyle. He never said that. Yeah, they took his words and it went to the wind with them. And they did the same thing with Pope Benedict. He made some comments during the interview regarding condoms, and they quickly said, oh, Benedict finally succumbed. He's going to allow condoms and whatnot. Um, Condoms for people for couples who have HIV or whatnot. And they just went off on a tangent, creating all kinds of stories. So, in my opinion, the Cardinals should um, discuss things among themselves, not go to the media. That's the worst thing you could do, is go to the media or go to a blog or and whatnot and start saying, oh, well, this guy said this and I disagree with that. And, this guy is not understanding what the church is. Uh, I mean, that's just wrong. That shouldn't be done because it makes the church look like a circus, like a sideshow, like a Jerry Springer show, bishop versus bishop, WWE type thing. That's not what the church should look like to the world. And then Cardinal Burke giving these interviews and making comments about the Pope, saying that insinuating that the Pope is not in control or is not a good leader or pretty much telling the Pope what to do, that he has to clarify the teaching and whatnot, despite knowing that a synod is supposed to be for bishops to argue and fight amongst each other, not for the Pope to be instructing them. But he supposedly made these comments there. And then he comes out saying that he didn't make the comments. And, he goes to the media and then he wonders how the media took his words and interpret them as him being dissenting or angry with Pope Francis. I mean, what else do you expect, Cardinal Burke? If you're going to the media, the gossip of all gossips, the media, and you're voicing all these different opinions, which you should keep between you and Francis, with Pope Francis. And that's why I wrote a blog post, muscle the Cardinals. We gotta get them red muscles and put them on their mouths. With all respect to the Cardinals and the bishops, but they have to put a muscle on it and be quiet and keep the discussions and the debate private amongst themselves. And then when the time is ready, you release the documents of the relatio and everything else correctly, with the correct translation and so forth, and not throw everything out there in the media and let the media go into a frenzy, bringing about different interpretations that make the lay people look at each other. Huh? Did he just say that? Did they just say that? You know, valuing homosexual lifestyles, or however the expression was, or there's value to the homosexual lifestyle, something like that. I forgot how the wording was, the incorrect translation, and so forth. And that's what's going to happen if you don't keep control of these things. And Pope Francis also has some blame in this, and that's one of my criticisms of Pope Francis. Don't get me wrong, I like him a lot. He's awesome, and no disrespect to Pope Benedict, but Pope Francis is a bit of a fresh air in the church. Not because Pope Benedict, I should say, did anything wrong. He was excellent as well. Um, but he had a different way of doing things. And that way of doing things is not really going to work in today's world, unfortunately. So Pope Benedict was more of an intellectual theologian and so forth. And he writes all these beautiful documents, these beautiful homilies, these beautiful texts. And he reads them to the people whenever he went around the world. And do you honestly think the people are listening to what he's saying? No, it's just, you know, babbling to them. They're not paying attention to the richness of what Pope Benedict preached and said via his writings. They're not paying attention to that. This is why the approach, the way the message is delivered, needs to be updated. Again, not an attack against Pope Benedict. He's awesome. He's great. I was extremely depressed and sad to see him retire, but God knows what he does. But Pope Francis, in contrast, he's more out there. He's not afraid to use colloquial terms, terms that the people understand, as opposed to Pope Benedict, who was more academic, academically toned, and used verbiage like that of a professor. And most people are not college educated, and they're not gonna comprehend what he was trying to say. Whereas Pope Francis, he says the same thing, but he says it in the language of the people. So it's easier for them to understand and grasp it. But the problem with that is that he's not clear. He says certain things like the who am I to judge gays? And he says certain things and they could be interpreted either way. What they call the double intender. And he has to be careful with that because people take it, the media especially takes it and runs with the wind with it. And and we see that time in and time out with Pope Francis. He says something and the media people completely misinterpret it. Then you have some Catholic bloggers whining, oh, Pope Francis said this. I don't like him. He's a liberal, and blah, blah, blah. And they completely misunderstood what he was trying to say. So, my advice to Pope Francis is think before you say something because whatever you say is being closely monitored. And, if you say something, mean it and be very clear about it. Make sure you say it in a way that only has one meaning. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess. And lastly, the atheists, claiming that with the church closings and so forth, that the church is dying, that it's going to disappear, blah, blah, blah. Yesterday, I mentioned Dr. Lawrence Krauss, his opinion that the church is going, or religion is going to disappear within a generation. My message is that it's not going to disappear. And just because we're witnessing these church closings or these restructuring our parishes doesn't mean that the church is going to disappear. No, because what's going to happen, especially in New York, 55 new parishes are going to come out. So what's going to happen is that they're just going to prune the extra leaves out there that are dying, that are not used anymore. So then new, stronger branches could branch out. That's what the cardinals and the bishops are doing in different dioceses. It's not that the church is dying little by little, a parish is dying, and eventually all of them are going to be gone. No, that's not going to happen. The reality is, like I stated in the beginning, is that our ancestors, the early settlers, they built way too many parishes, one every other block, and that's just too much. You don't need so many church buildings, especially in today's world. And cities change, and unfortunately, you can't uproot a parish building and carry it with you to wherever the Catholics move. If a specific area has Catholics and they build a parish there, then 100 years later, the Catholics move out of there and the area changes. It becomes a business, commercial area. You can't take the parish and rip it out and carry it wherever the Catholics move to. You can't do that. So the only remedy is to close the parish and use it for something else, or sell it. I would love to see all these parishes stay open, but we have to be realistic. They can't function without people and without finances. And we have to be. I would love to see these buildings, if they can't be kept as churches, or at least turn them into libraries. I would love to see, some of these parishes converted into a, a library where people will come and read on the faith and different things and whatnot. That would be awesome to turn these buildings into libraries or something like that. Or even better, shelters or soup kitchens for the homeless. That would be even better to turn these buildings instead of just selling them to developers who might make them into apartment buildings for rich people or a store or whatever. Use it for something for the community. At least in my opinion, that's what I would try to do if I were a bishop. So again, back to the atheists, they shouldn't celebrate this as a defeat on the part of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is not going anywhere. And according to studies, atheists don't last that long. They eventually become Christian, they convert. And we're just going through a transition now of getting rid of these old buildings where the people moved out and building even stronger ones. And a good example is in the West and in the coast, that big, huge building, the Crystal Cathedral, which used to be part of a Presbyterian church. Um, I forgot the Power Hour, I think it was. And I remember seeing that on Channel 5 in New York City and on Sundays sometimes when I was flipping the channels. And the church went bankrupt, the Presbyterian church went bankrupt, and they had tens of thousands of members, and they just couldn't afford to keep that building. And guess who bought it? The Catholic Church bought it, the diocese bought it. And now it's going to be a new cathedral. This huge crystal cathedral is now part of the Catholic Church, showing that the church is growing. And so just because you hear of church closings doesn't mean that we're closing up shop for good or we're not. We're going to be the next Caldor Alexanders, um, or Sears. No, the church is just getting rid of properties, being realistic and getting rid of the properties that have no use anymore and building even bigger ones where the people are at. Anyhow, thank you for listening. You're welcome to visit my blogs, www.sacerdotus.com, catholicfaithsharing.blogspot.com, rationalityfaithful.blogspot.com, also on the radio, blogtalkradio.com/sacerdotus, and send me a message or whatever you want, and give me ideas of what you want me to write about or talk about. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you, and Mary keep.